Hi there, Telebait here with another Legends of Runeterra deck guide. We'll take a look at the deck, some tips, how to mulligan, and a review of one of my games after the season reset in Plat. I've created a really fun deck here. This is a Taric Lee Sin deck that can pull off some crazy one-turn kills. It took me a while to refine the list, but now I'm happy with this deck over on the ladder. It could be tech with more or less healing depending on what you face on ladder, but for what I face, I like the balance of healing I have in this deck. The plan with the deck is to stall out early on using Concussive Palm and Chump blockers, then use Taric to stabilise the board with Pale Cascade and Blessing of Targon. Going towards the late game, about turn 7 onwards, you can look to use Lee as your finisher. Looking into the deck, I run Gift Giver. This is a great chump blocker, and gems help level Lee and Taric faster. I run Spacey Sketcher. This is a very great versatile invoke card. Usually I'm looking for Equinox or the Serpent. Cards like Moonlight, the Messenger, or the Trickster are also very good cards. Eye of the Dragon is a key early unit. This is the card you always want to see in your hand early on. It helps you stall out until your win condition. I run Pale Cascade. This card is completely OP in my opinion, and should be a free of in every Targon deck. We run Sonic Wave as this is the only way this deck has to interact with your opponent's plan. I find you need 3 copies of this, otherwise your opponent can just do whatever their plan is, and you need a way just to slow them down enough to get to your win condition. The deck is very champion reliant, so I run 3 copies of Bastion to protect them. I run 1 copy of Hush. This is a really strong card, but in general, people are shifting to decks less vulnerable to it, so it's only a 1 of. Mentor of the Stones is a solid free drop. It can be bad into some matchups like against Bilgewater decks, because of Make It Rain, but even getting 1 attack off is good value with this card. As a second win condition, I run Zenith Blade. If you don't draw Lee, this deck can really struggle to finish out gains, but having Zenith Blade gives you an alternative win condition where you can just buff up a unit and use the Overwhelm to finish off opponents. Additionally, if you do draw Lee, Zenith Blade is a great card to combo with him, and you can pull off some of the crazy one-turn kills. I run Concussive Palm, and this is purely to stall out until you can get to your win condition. I run 1 copy of Deny as more protection for champs, and the balance between Bastion and Deny really depends on what you face. If you feel like Deny is a more useful card for what you're against, then run more copies of Deny and drop some copies of Bastion. I run 2 copies of Spirit's Refuge, and this is just to help against aggro matchups. You can use this on Taric and get double Spirit's Refuge, which usually heals me back to full health. I'm not sure if this is a bug, but if you use Spirit's Refuge on Lee Sin with his Dragon's Rage, he gets double healing from his attack. I run Taric in this deck, and the goal isn't really to level him up, but if you do level him up, that's a great bonus. But we run a lot of buffs, so this synergizes really well with Taric. Blessing of Targon is just a great buff spell, and any Taric deck, I would always include at least 2 copies of this card. I run 2 copies of Deep Meditation, and this is just to make sure we don't run out of steam. There is some argument to run 3, but I found when I ran 3 copies, it bricked out my hand quite a lot. And finally, I run 3 copies of Lee Sin. This is the win condition and the key card in the deck. You want all your buffs going onto him, so you can do a massive amount of damage to the Nexus with his Dragon's Rage. Other cards which are quite good in this deck, but I didn't find a way to squeeze in, are Guiding Touch, Twin Disciplines, and Claws of the Dragon. I find Guiding Touch was only useful into aggro matchups, so if you're against a lot of aggro, it's a good inclusion in this deck, but I found I was generally against 50-50 aggro and control. So I decided to drop the Guiding Touches, and the Spirit's Refuge was enough healing for me. On the other side of things, Twin Disciplines is a great way to give a bit of extra reach, so if you're against a lot of slower decks, I would include Twin Disciplines as a way to get those buffed up Lee Sin kicks quicker. You'd think Claws of the Dragon would be good in this deck, but in my experience, Claws of the Dragon is a good tempo card, and this deck is trying to play for value and card advantage. So a card like Claws of the Dragon doesn't actually fit with this deck's game plan, even though you'd be getting it out of your hand very often, which is why I haven't included it in the deck. On to the tips and tricks. Your best start is actually no 1-drop and play an Eye of the Dragon on turn 2 into Pale Cascade. This gives you a free 4 on turn 2, which can trade up into any unit your opponent can play. You don't necessarily need a 1-drop at the start with this deck, as the 1-drops in this deck set up value later on. Sticking with the early game, Gift Giver into Spacey Sketcher is another great combo. Spacey Sketcher can use the gem for discard, and is a good way to get card advantage on your opponent. When using the gems with this deck, you generally don't want to use it only for the 1 attack, 1 mana for 1 attack is not good value. You either want to heal as well, double up the effect with Taric, or use the gem on Lee, where you can guarantee the Nexus damage. When playing Mentor of the Stones, all you need with him is 1 attack to get good value. Generally, I'll attack in with him, knowing he's going to die, but getting that 1 buff off and giving the free gems is all you need him for. And actually, quite often with him, all I want is the gems for him to help level Lee Sin, and I'll play him, just trading him in, hoping he'll die, so I can level Lee Sin the next turn with the gems. The trick with this deck is to always play slow and have mana spare for your protective spells such as Bastion and Deny. I often found if my opponent managed to kill even just one of Taric or Lee, I struggled to close out the game. In this clip here, you can see I wait until turn 7 to play Lee because I have 4 mana banked for the Deny. Finally, even though Lee and Taric should be your main targets for buffs with this deck, sometimes you won't draw Taric early, and you need to use the buffs on your smaller units just so you can survive the early game. Knowing when to do that is really crucial. I can't give you any general bits of advice of when to do this, it's just a feel you're going to have to get used to of you're running out of time, your opponent's going to kill you before you even get your Lee Sin down, so you need to start using your buffs on your units so you can get rid of some of their units. Going into the Mulligan, cards I always keep are Eye of the Dragon and Pale Cascade. As I said before, this is such a strong combo early game and your best start. I also keep Gift Giver and Spacey Sketcher, as early blockers are useful for stalling out. Although, in general, I don't play the 1-drops unless I really need to. The deck makes good use of spell mana, so being able to save your mana and bank it as spell mana is always good. The situational cards, against aggressive decks, I would always keep Concussive Palm, and against slower decks, I would keep Taric and Lee Sin, as it's important to play your champions on curve in this deck, especially into control decks. I also sometimes keep Mentor of the Stones if I'm against decks without much removal, such as Targon or Freylord. Hopefully you try out this deck and enjoy playing it. I put the deck code in the description below. Before I leave you with the game review, if you enjoyed the video or the deck, please leave a like and subscribe. Thanks for watching and have a good day. So going into the game review, we're against Elise Nocturne, so this will be an aggressive matchup. Looking at the Mulligan, Eye of the Dragon is an easy keep here. I should be keeping Pale Cascade as well, but I choose not to, which is bit confusing. Eye of the Dragon to Pale Cascade's great, because if he plays Elise on turn 2, I can play Eye of the Dragon, Pale Cascade, and trade up my Eye of the Dragon. I think not playing Spacey Sketcher turn 1 is fine. Like, if he doesn't play anything, there's no need for me to play anything. So, if I have the Pale Cascade here, I can attack with Eye of the Dragon. He might try and block with Elise, and I can trade up my Eye of the Dragon into Elise. But because I threw it away, I can't do that. So I don't have any fearsome blockers in my hand, so I'm just going to develop my Eye of the Dragon, get more healing on the board to counter his aggro game plan. Going forwards into the next turn, we're probably looking at using Sonic Wave to help proc Deep Meditation on the turn after. Looking at how to block here, there is a case to block the 1/1 with Eye of the Dragon, but because he might have a Cruel Sensation in his hand, it's not really worth it, as that will give him the Elise level. Whereas currently he doesn't have the Elise level. He plays House Spider, so he gets the Elise level anyway, but there's nothing I could have done to stop that. I still think it's the correct play not to block the 1/1. There's not much advantage in killing it at all, so why risk it? Drawing Taric here is great. Get to play him on curve, then I can use Sonic Wave and Concussive Strike. I believe the second part's called Concussive Strike. To kill Elise, which I really need to do this turn because otherwise I'm in a lot of trouble. So I think I'm about to make a mistake here. Yeah, I give Eye of the Dragon Challenger, so this is a mistake. I should give Taric Challenger because the toughness will protect him from Elise killing him. It does put him on 1 health, so any sort of 1 damage spell that he might have would kill Taric. That's the only advantage of doing it this way. But I do think it's more important to keep the Eye of the Dragon alive. Yeah, Judging from that mouse wiggle, I'm a little frustrated that my Eye of the Dragon's dead. So, turn 5, I think it's just a case of reacting to whatever he plays here. Okay, so he plays Nocturne here, and he gives my healing vulnerable. So what I'd ideally like to do is block his Nocturne using Pale Cascade on the Serpent to kill it. But because he's given it vulnerable, he's not going to give me a chance to do that. He's going to protect his Nocturne. So given that, the best play here is to use Zenith Blade onto Taric, and that way I can use Pale Cascade onto Taric afterwards to kill his Nocturne. I'm thinking about using Deep Meditation here, but hopefully I see the right line. So yeah, I'm using Zenith Blade onto Taric, so I've definitely seen the line of I can kill his Nocturne if I use Pale Cascade as well. I should also probably block with Eye of the Dragon, just to save some health. Yeah, so I think this is the best way to block. There might be some case to only block 1 damage with Eye of the Dragon, because if he has a 1 damage ping, it will kill the Eye of the Dragon. So it's probably slightly better to block 1 damage. That might be a very small mistake. Yeah, and it does get punished. It's not the end of the world for me. I've still got 2 1-drops in hand, so they're great buff targets for Taric. The important thing with Taric is you always need to have a support target, so having these 1-drops in hand is a great way that I can play one of them and still use a buff spell. Gift Giver's slightly better here because it gives me the gem to use as the buff spell. Using the other Zenith Blade is a bit too expensive, especially since my Taric already has Overwhelm. So what I think I should use is Deep Meditation to see if I can get something like Pale Cascade, which would be slightly better. If not, use the gem. So, Blessing of Targon, Spirit's Refuge, both great cards here. Because I've got a very buff-heavy hand then, it's really important I keep Taric alive here. Taric is 1 off leveling up, okay. I was just wondering that then, and I did check. He's 1 off leveling up, so if I use the gem, he levels up, he's not going to take any damage. So he's at no risk of dying, which is really important, because if he does die here, I have no good way of stabilizing. Bit strange that he chose to block the 2/2 and not... Oh no, Taric has Overwhelm. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, Serpent here is no brainer. Serpent's one of the best cards you can get. It's an extra blocker for 0 mana, which is great for me here. Okay, I'm in a bit of a difficult situation next turn. I'm going to have 7 mana. So, I only can actually play 1 card next turn. So, it's probably going to be Spirit's Refuge or Concussive Palm. So if he develops with Concussive Palm, because you can block 4 damage. It depends what he develops. Okay. So going here, you can play Spirit's Refuge on Taric, which is 4 health, effectively, or I can play Concussive Palm onto one of the free attack Fearsome units, and that'll block 3 damage, plus whatever I use the unit to block, so that'll be 5 damage overall. So it's much better to use Concussive Palm than Spirit's Refuge. So yeah, this is the right play. I'll be surprised if he doesn't attack here. He might replace the stunned unit, that's the only other thing he can do. If he does replace the stunned unit, then I use the Mentor of the Stones. This is actually even better. Because I use Concussive Palm instead of Spirit's Refuge, it protects me from 6 damage. Okay, he's not swinging with everything, which is a bit strange. Okay, working out what the best blocks here. So I have to block with Taric and the free 2 into his fearsome units. There's no choice around that. I'd like to keep Taric healthy, but I don't think that's an option here. It's much better to just save the free health. So thinking about next turn, I want a Spirit's Refuge next turn. So the extra healing from Mentor of the Stones is pretty helpful. So I think I'll trade the Cobra in to the 2-1.
Your attack is obvious.
The Cobra is worse than... Yeah, this is the better play. Gift Giver is the better trade into the 2-1. The Challenger on Cobra can be very useful. So, I open attack here because if he's got something like Decimate plus Noxian Guillotine, Decimate plus Noxian Fervor, then I lose. So I have to open attack. If he has a way to kill me with fast spells, there's nothing I can do. So this is the best line of play. And that's the best way to set up the attacks. Yep. So if this attack goes through, we're pretty much good. Yep. So I really don't see how he can win it from here. Going to Skira, doesn't really do anything here. Just developing Lee Sin. There's no urgency, we can block all these units anyway, we're not under threat of dying. And that's GG. So hopefully you found this game review somewhat useful. If you did, please let me know in the comments and I'll include it in future videos. Thanks for watching, have a good day.